It wants me to agree.
It does.
Okay, I have.
Okay. So, hello.
Hello.
Do you want to just say a little bit about who you are, like your name, where you are, maybe age, if you want to start?
My name is Tali. My nickname is Tali. My name is Talia, which is a whole story on its own right. Every few years I find out that it has a meaning in a different language that, of course, my parents didn't know about, so it's fun. My last name is Bar-Yoseph Levine. Levine is attributed to my father's request because we were only girls and Levine would have disappeared, even though it's a very common name. In our family, we don't have it anymore. So it's nothing to do with feminism, it's to do with being a good daughter.
Okay.
And Bar-Yoseph is my married name.
Okay.
42 years to be proud of, almost 43.
Mm-hmm.
I am 67 and I'm fine to say it.
And where are you?
Where am I? That's a very good question. I'm just outside Jerusalem in a very small municipality, which is about 10 minutes from the center of Jerusalem, where I was born. Jerusalem, that is, grew up and moved just a fraction out in order to have a garden with a house. Not a house with a garden. It's not a mistake in English.
Mm-hmm.
It's the wish, which in Jerusalem is almost impossible.
That sounds
And
like
another place that I'm at is
Mm-hmm.
in the middle of the Corona crisis,
Mm-hmm.
which I think, interestingly enough, both of us are at the same place. So considering that we are thousands of miles away, I think it's interesting.
Yes, it's actually made people very easy to access for this project over the past month.
They sit at home and they speak regularly on Zoom.
Pretty much, and everyone has become very adept at turning Zoom on and off, so it's great.
Right.
Okay, well, the first question that we have is, it's kind of a fun question. Who are you as a person? And you can take this as passions, qualities, interests, characteristics, existential. Who are you?
Fun question is an interesting definition of a very serious question. Who am I? I think the first thing that comes to my mind, oddly enough, is that I think I came here, it's a very strange way for me to speak, in order to put things together. So at some point I thought I came here to have fun, and at another point I thought I came here to be happy. And I had all kinds of thoughts throughout the 67 years that I'm here. And I think I realized that I'm here to matchmake, but not matchmake in the sense of marrying people or making them. In Judaism, it's a big deal, matchmaking.
Mm-hmm.
So I need to be careful. But connections, and very quickly I know, this should make that and that should be there. And I think that feeds a lot of my, at the end of the day, it feeds a lot of my organizational work. Other than that, I'm all the classical things. I'm still a female, and I'm a mother, which I really like, and I'm a grandmother, which I like even more. And I'm a wife, and I'm still a daughter, and until not that long ago, I was still a granddaughter.
Wow.
So, and it's meaningful because most Israelis do not have grandparents, and many of the Israelis are born to immigration families and to parents who came from other countries, either Europe after the Second World War or the Middle East for different unpleasant reasons. So I grew up, it's interesting. It's not a fun question, it's a serious question, as I said. But interestingly enough, I was lucky to grow up very proud because both my parents were born in Israel. I wasn't the only one, there are more. And they spoke very good Hebrew.
Mm.
And my grandparents also spoke Hebrew. So I, at the end of the day, came from a rooted family in many ways, which when I was a child was very meaningful. So there is a twinge of pride there that connects to Israel, which just framed like this, thanks to a question.
Mm-hmm.
What else am I? All kinds of things. Gestalt therapist, Gestalt consultant, or simply said, Gestalt human being. Mm-hmm. Try to write, try to teach, supervise. be a good human being.
Okay. All right. Well, one of the other questions that we had is who, and this doesn't have to be just a Gestalt person, who would you say has had the most impact on who you are as a human being?
The first one is my maternal grandmother. And the second one is my paternal grandfather. And they were not a couple, as you understand.
Right. And how was that impact?
The one for her incredible kindness, adaptation. She came to Israel because she followed her heart and she followed my grandfather, and she fell into this God-forsaken place that she had no preparation to deal with, and adapted in the most incredible manner, with red fingernails and set hair all the time, which was completely out of context, while my grandfather running around fixing the country. And she was always there, and she was amazing. And my paternal grandfather, who was also a activist, especially in reviving the Hebrew, by the way, a lot in South America and in Mexico. He was building places for people to study Hebrew. He was just amazing. He was fun. A piece of me is stable thanks to him. We used to play when I was little. That's the printer in the background. To prove that we don't have control of the environment. I remember being very young, and I used to say to him, "Grandpa, it's enough, I'm tired, let's not play anymore." And he used to say, "Just a little bit longer, I really want to play a bit more." So both of them added a huge value and, in fact, foundation to who I am. And then there are lots more other people in the family and around me. So that's on the personal level, the first two that popped to my head. Gestalt-wise, do you want Gestalt-wise too?
If you want to.
En route to Gestalt, I had one teacher who was actually an anthropologist, and he really put he was a teacher at the university. And Gestalt people, the first people that I studied with and impacted me greatly and actually revealed that I fell in love with this thing, which is called Gestalt, were Irv and Miriam Poster. They were both, Irv still is, very special. And one of the most special things for me about them, which I'm very happy to say out loud anywhere, is that they raised us they were not over parenting or over warm. They were very correctish, if it's possible to say, and kept boundaries, and they were great teachers. They didn't become too involved and too connected. And there were days, as we know, that people used to be before them, during them. And at the same time, they knew very well how to stay connected with those of us who wanted to stay connected to them, and to, at some point, be very clear that we grew up and we are somebodies to learn from as well. And that is a talent. Being a teacher and a trainer myself, it's quite tempting sometimes to keep the relationship.
Yes.
You know? And this is something that I really appreciated about them. They used to come to London a lot when I directed the program at Metanoia. Always during at least one of the breaks or one of the dinners, one of them would say, now that you run a program which is much bigger than ours, can you tell us more about that? Or can you teach us more about that? And it's their amazing trait. They taught people to see them growing up, which I think is an amazing asset of a good gardener.
Yes, as a gardener, as a parent, as a teacher, useful skills.
So there are many other people that influenced me, and it's not about giving lists, but what pops to my mind, and they were like the first that influenced me, is that, I know it because I still quote them. You don't quote people who didn't impact you.
Of course. Right.
And I first went to study with Irvin Miriam in 1981, so that's very long ago.
Well, it's a wonderful year. That's when I was born.
Ah, very good year for the
See, good things happened that year. hmm Okay, well, the next question that we have is, what event or circumstance would you say has shaped you, and how?
Mm. It's a good question. If I need to choose one event, it will be a bit arrogant for myself and the event. Uh, the first two things that come to my mind, and I'm sure there are many more, the third one already pops in. The one is that my parents got divorced when I was 10. I learned a lot about it. I'm not sure I want to talk much more about it, but it was meaningful um, on many levels, positive, negative. If I leave giving it a qualified, it was definitely a shaping moment or time. And as you just said, when you were born, and I said how old I am, I'm much older than you. In those days in Israel, getting divorced was utter shame. I mean, so at that time, when people asked me about my father, I used to say that he died, which was much easier and with a lot more pride or straight spine than divorced. So no doubt that it shaped my life, and it's the first thing that came to my mind when you asked, so it must be part of the answer. Um, the other one, I think growing up in Israel is a shaping event on its own, ongoing event.
Mm-hmm.
And I think at the beginning of my doctoral, which is about different, bridging of difference and cultures, and the basic question was, how did you get to, I needed to protect why is it that culture interests me? Because it was based on the book, The Bridge. And I realized that since the day I was born, I never heard one language, or differently said, we heard so many languages and we met so many people that were dressed differently, talked differently, behaved differently, had different foods and different habits, that it it is shaping anything, anything and everything. I knew that I walk into the greengrocer, I'll hear Arabic, and I walk into the corner shop, I'll hear Hungarian. I didn't know that one enough, and I didn't know anything of the other one. And the people will look differently and smell differently, and I think it's a big deal. With all the downfalls that I'm not going to talk about Israel, and the attacks that I get here and there as if I am Israel, believe me, I'm not. I think this is a very strong, and seeing people dealing with it and ending up with something that can be called a country with all its fault, it also has some quite amazing advantages and abilities. So I think that's also, and I can't avoid, if I'll be honest, to talk about being a soldier and being in the army and being an officer. And many people nowadays will look at it and say, nah, with huge amount of criticism and hidden faces or, overt criticism. Really, at 18 years old, having a responsibility over 250, 18 and a bit years old after officers course, having responsibility for 250 female soldiers, taking care of their welfare, with, believe it or not, I was a military judge. I could have put anybody up to 7 days in jail, which I didn't, but I had the authority. And it's quite an amazing educational role.
Wow.
Let alone, looking at welfare. And if you think about what I'm doing today, where I ended up, looking at welfare, having to go home and decide whether a welfare, because the Israeli army is welfare-based, so people could come and ask to go home for a month to earn money for parents or to help or whatever. So I had to go and investigate. What do I know about investigating 18 years and, old, 19 years old? So it was quite a demand. And taking care of them. They were spread over quite a large area, so they were not all in the same base. So it was a wandering role. And protect them from unpleasant events and support them through whatever. It was quite a burden and
Oh,
fantastic.
I had no idea about that part of your history.
You see?
Yes.
Because where we belong to now, the immediate reaction is usually so judgmental and critical. People don't take, not all, but some people don't take a breath. Ooh, how was it? Oh, really interesting. Or just listening. That one becomes more and more protected and less, oh, she thinks the army is a good place. Some I invent and some I've heard. So
It has a context, and I'm partly surprised because I know a lot of older men who have military experience. I don't know a lot of women your age with military experience.
it's compulsory. You don't have a choice. You become 18. Either you declare, which would be a lie, that you're very religious Orthodox Jew. So
Okay.
women are exempt from the army, by now also some of the men. Or you go because you serve a place that needs the service. Some of it is you go because you go. Some of it you go because you really believe in it. And also remember, I was 18. I don't want to calculate how many years ago. The world was different. The world has changed.
Right.
I sat in Sinai, very near the Suez Canal, and the experience of being, was a lot of actually battlefield. We were not in the front, but we were a little bit in the back. But going to shower, coming out with wet hair, just dressed and oops, being bombed would be not a daily event, but an event. So definitely shapes the human being. Before you go into, it's really easy to look back and be smart. But if I go back, let's remember it's a Gestalt adventure, what you're doing. If I actually go back rather than look back, I can only admit that it was an amazing time. Very challenging, very connecting. So I still have friends from that time. We meet twice or three times a year. A group of us that served at the same time. And lots of wonderful times of community, of responsibility, of vouching for one another. So depends which lens you put on. And it's really easy to look from the outside, but the inside was, I must admit, for whatever it's worth, had a lot of amazing opportunities and times in it, and fun. Listen, 18 years old, so responsible, out of the house, free like a bird in a way, even though it's the army. A lot of positive. And of course, I decided today that I'm going to be as positive as possible. Not for you, it's the whole day. We didn't say that, well, we're talking actually literally, it's Independence Day in Israel. So it's an interesting day to speak about what influenced me or where I'm from, and it's an important day in Israel. And yesterday was Memorial Day, and as you know, it's an important day for me, which is a very difficult day. It's connected because what we say in Israel is by their death, they gave us life, which is literally true. It's a literal translation. So it's an interesting time for this interview.
It is, and I appreciate your openness. Well,
to walk the talk, don't I?
Yeah, yeah, you seem to. So we actually move a little bit more into sort of the Gestalt part of your life. You've talked about Irvin Miriam. I'll ask in a minute how you actually got into Gestalt, but I'm curious how you feel that it's affected you as a person.
Say it again.
How does Gestalt, the whole thing, however you want to take it, influenced or affected you as a person? Obviously, within all of these other aspects and influences in your life. What has Gestalt done with you or to you?
I think for me, And I think you know that I call it Gestalt philosophy of being rather than Gestalt therapy or Gestalt consultancy. I think the most dramatic, which is probably the right word to describe it, for me was the preach. Yeah, preach. The value in being. The value in what you are is what you are. The value in whatever comes up is, if I go a little bit, maybe field theory, whatever comes up is as worth it as anything else. I come from the psychoanalytical approach. I'm a graduate of the Hebrew University, and where all we studied, we studied clinical psychology, all we studied was psychoanalysis. We had 2 hours about behaviorism and a kind of a group dynamic Gestalt, which gave 2 points without any work, so I went to it. It was horrible, by the way. So I took it just because it was easy. I had to sit there 2 hours a week and I got the 2 points. But the rest was psychoanalysis, and psychoanalysis is all about telling you who you are and what you are and what's your process and what you want and what your parents. And the thing that completely, every time I think about it, I get as excited as you can hear and as moved as you can hear in my breathing, is the kindness. I think it looks at everything, for me, that's my definition, in a kind eye. So what did your parents do, which is how the psychoanalyst will speak, or blame you or somebody around you, depends your role. It always, there is interest, and I believe, if we work well, the judgment is not welcome. Or if to say it differently, in a positive way, stays in a different place. You have it, you can own it. That's not the direction. The idea that everything is about putting everything together rather than analyzing and dropping it. And if something goes wrong, you didn't go in long enough into analysis, go back. The way I see it is that we took the next step. And the next step is how to make it one or a whole or complete the puzzle so you have better life. And you decide whether it's better or not. For me, that was the mind-boggling. Mm-hmm. Wow, I can decide for myself what's right for me. I like it, I stay.
And how has that affected you as a person? Knowing that it exists, experiencing that, living that.
The first sentence, surprisingly for me, that comes to my mind is that it gave me life. Because we all interpret all the time, we know it. Actually, the Gestalt discipline works against the way many human beings are just being. Mm-hmm. And this is how I grew up, with what's right and what's wrong, and we have to build a country, and you can't speak another language other than Hebrew, and everybody else around. And suddenly, who I was and who I wanted to be, or what I could have explored about who I was and wanted to be, mattered. And so I grew up with wonderful people. They just had a different way of looking at life. My mother is 90 years old, as fresher than you and I, each one of us together, and both of us together. She still sometimes says, I don't know what you say. I don't understand. You know?
She's still waiting for you to get out of this phase.
But now that she has been very sick and surprisingly enough is recovering, she kept saying to me, I can't believe it. You're okay to wait for results. You're okay to push everybody who wants to treat me before they have all the answers, because everybody says 90 years old, give her some palliative care. And I said, day at a time, let's wait. Mm-hmm. And for me, now, it's not in retrospect. I sit there and I think, okay, theory. You deserve all the credit. You, the theory. One day at a time is so difficult. We know it with Corona days now, and so correct. So that's the beginning of how it impacts me. But this is like the big deals. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And the most amazing thing, it still excites me. Like I met it, in 81 at Irvin, with Irvin Miriam posted the first evening. Mm-hmm. Must count for something. Either I'm totally stupid or the theory is totally amazing. So I prefer to go with the second.
Yeah, I would prefer that too. I think it's probably a little bit more accurate. So you said something about how you came to Gestalt. Did you want to say anything more about that? I mean, you've talked about the course, about Irv, about Miriam.
I can tell a funny story about how I got into Gestalt, which is a known story. As I said, the first year I took because it was easy. I assumed it's going to be easy, no writing, You just got the 2 points, pass and go. It was really bad. And then we lived for 3 years in Boston after we got married. We have a habit, my husband studies and I work, which was really nice. It happened twice, more than twice. And just before we were going to go back to Israel, after I worked quite a lot in a psychiatric hospital and did all kinds of things not related to Gestalt, I got into panic. Everybody else was doing 3 years. I didn't really develop, and all the rules in Israel to become a psychotherapist are really complex. It's under the law. So I didn't know what to do. So a really nice friend said to me, hey, listen, I studied this Gestalt at the Gestalt Institute of Cleveland. Why don't you go there? Just because you feel like you have something. I wrote a letter. I don't know if you know, there were days that you used to put a little stamp on an envelope, write and wait every day next to the box. And they told, the reaction was that it's 3 weeks, and the 3 weeks are spread and you have to take them separately. Anyway, I didn't have any more time for it and not the money to come and go from Boston to Cleveland. So I was quite depleted, and she said to me, I heard about these 2 people. I think they're called Polster or something like this. The once upon a time they belonged to Cleveland. Now they moved to San Diego. Try them. So I wrote a letter. I remember, it was May. I wrote a letter, I get the letter back. We are very sorry. The program is already full for the last 2 years. If you want to come again, if you have any questions, call this number. Call this number. Who called the long distance? Call them. I stood next to the phone in Boston and I thought, okay, the phone bill was $5.
Oh.
So that was a lot. So I decided to call. I called, the guy picks up the phone and we start the conversation. Needless to say, at the end I understood it was Irv. And he said, we're full. I don't know what to say. Why do you want so much? I said, I can't come next year. I'm going back to Israel. Nobody's going to fly back from Israel to San Diego in 1981. I said, why do you so insist on Gestalt? Didn't have an answer. I really didn't have an answer. I thought it's a piece of nothing. It was only because the friend said do something and she happened to study Gestalt. So a moment of silence, expensive, long distance. And then I said, I think you need a corrective emotional experience, which is a phrase from Franz Alexander, who is a well-known psychoanalyst that I studied when I did my master's degree. There was a longer silence. And Irv said, you got yourself accepted, come over. And it was, I think, 2 or 3 weeks before the program started. Mm-hmm. It was sheer coincidence.
A corrective emotional experience. That's one way of describing it.
Yeah, I said, I need a corrective emotional experience. So, and we picked up to leave Boston. Benny took 2 suitcases and Benny, my husband, went back to Israel. I took 2 huge suitcases and went to San Diego. Must admit, the first night I landed over, it was about 10:30 in the night. And I thought, what do I know about these people? There was no internet. I didn't know anything about them. I spoke to a nice guy on the phone. I thought maybe they sell women for slavery. What do I know? That was exactly what I thought every day. And we were landing, it was late, and you landed through you saw the buildings, it's an old, and just to complete the first day we sit there, everybody was already there, of course. We sit in a small hotel room, 28 people. Renzo, very nice guy, who lives in Finland, he's Swiss, sitting on my right, he starts. I was so pleased that he started the check-in because it meant I'm the last. Everybody says, I've been saving for the last 5 years, and a woman from Hong Kong said, for the last 15 years, I saved every penny, and I heard about you, and I read everything. And I thought, what am I going to say? I don't know who you are. So when they got to me, I said, I wanted to lie, but actually the truth is I have no idea who you are. This is what my friend said, and I'm here because this is what I need. And 10 days later, 5 days later, I was in love, and that was it.
Wonderful.
And it still is.
I'm very much identify with that.
And
I don't often know where I'm going or who I'm talking to, but there I am.
Much fun. Many years later, I found out from Peter Lichtenberg, who found my face in a picture, that we were there together in the two different groups. I totally didn't remember it, which I really regret because I love him. It could have been really nice.
Okay, well, after you got in, what would you say, I mean, I know this is like a long part, but maybe in a small way, what would you say has been your most important piece for you of your involvement in Gestalt? What has been your most meaningful experience or contribution?
I don't know. I mean, the question most always puts me into trouble because I don't know what to do with most.
More right now. It may not be the definitive answer, but.
And also it takes me to where I need to be a bit arrogant because you asked me about what I contributed. So it goes against my father's introjection that one shouldn't have a big head.
Okay.
Don't be big-headed. I think if I drop the wish to be a bit modest, I think that coming to Metanoia, which is in England, in London, at a time that there were about over 200 trainees, at times near 300. I think that I'm not exaggerating at all, every given year, because it was kind of a workshop program. I never knew until many years later that it was probably the largest program or one of the larger programs, definitely the English-speaking ones. And I brought my Israeliness. The place was run by South Africans, so it wasn't predominantly, just run by English people, by locals. I think I brought in there my academic side because the Hebrew University is very strictly oriented towards academia. Those were days, we're talking about 89 now, that Gestalt didn't have a lot published and a lot was still very kind of, process oriented. I don't know if it's a contribution or not, but I think I definitely belong to the group that was pushing for more academic attention. At times I'm being blamed for it. And if I'm honest, I'm quite proud of it. So if I'm talking only about myself and how I see it, I think I was part of the United Kingdom Council of Psychotherapy. I was part of GPTI, the Gestalt GPTI Psychotherapy Training Institute, which was established by Malcolm Parlott, Petrushka Clarkson, Sue Fish, and Maria Gilbert, who were all three from Metanoia, and Malcolm was from the southern part of the UK and had a very different and special institute. I was the fifth to come, seniority-wise. And I think together I'm very proud for belonging there. I think we did quite a nice job. I don't know that many people know, but the Gestalt Journal actually started there. The idea started there, and Malcolm said, oh, okay, I'll pick it up as a chore. And I think many people don't know this, and maybe even forgot it, or definitely don't know it. So, in a way, I had a little finger in there too. So in that sense, I think this is something that without any plans, as usual, my life goes like this. This is what happened. I think looking at culture, and the culture book that is definitely Gordon's idea, Gordon Wheeler. I wouldn't even dream to think that I can do such a thing. So I owe him a lot about that, in that area. I think it was the first that looked at culture. Gordon invented it or asked, invited me to do it. It was somewhere in the beginnings of the 90s, maybe. I finished it only 2005. It was published for many bad reasons, many of them to do with me. So I think that's a contribution as well. The word culture, the world didn't talk about culture that often then. And I think the writers, I only edited it, but the writers, like many very good writers, contributed a whole new perspective of how to look at culture, that culture is much bigger than ethnic questions, and that men and women are different cultures, and there is people wrote amazing things. I couldn't even begin to imagine the subject, let alone the content that people addressed. So I think that's quite a contribution. And I see that, it's many years. You can call it an old book and still has quite a lot of interest. Quite many people are interested to still find it. So that's probably a contribution as well. And the contribution I'd like to be remembered for is the Gestalt philosophy of being. Because I think that calling it Gestalt therapy is a crime, to be honest. It's such a good thing. To call it just Gestalt therapy is a great loss. I learned, I met in Germany a group that I don't think it exists anymore, but they were only looking at Gestalt in an educational slant. They had a Gestalt kindergarten in Berlin. Gestalt kindergarten, amazing. Mm-hmm. They taught, some of them were university teachers, professors, and they're amazing group. And Gestalt consultancy, needless to say, of course. And Gestalt being. Mm-hmm. So for me, this is really important. And again, to bring back Philip Lichtenberg, my very dear friend, who was the first one who said, I don't know, I don't think it was in Puebla. I think it was in Philadelphia. He was the first psychotherapist who quote, I was there, it was just at the conference, and he said, as Talia says, and he was the first one who didn't fight with me about taking away from Gestalt therapy, by calling it Gestalt philosophy of being. I think Gestalt therapy is one wonderful derivative. So I would like to be remembered for that. I'm close enough to dying. I can think about it.
Okay. All right. Well, I'm curious. I'll go to this one. Do you feel like you're part of a Gestalt community?
That's a trick question.
Not to be political, not to be tricky, but
no, it's a trick question.
Your experience.
It's a trick question, even if you didn't mean for it to be a trick question. Well, you're asking me this when I sit on a number of seats, very oddly and way too much. The one is sitting on the executive committee of the Intagio, which is a nice creation of Gestalt consultants or Gestalt people in organizations. And I represent Israel on the, how's it called? GB, what's G4? Board, something board. I sit on it, I should know. It's not grand board. I know it's not grand, but I don't know what it is. Anyway, it's the board of the EAGT. The EGT is run by the executive, really. So the general board is the board of all the representatives. It's a board it's called a board. It meets twice a year. And it's very involved in the localities, which is really nice. It's a completely different concept. And of course, I assume you know that I'm the president of the AGT.
Yeah, I noticed that for sure.
I will not mention the people who thought that I'm completely out of my mind. Some of them are very known. So what was the question?
Those are organizations.
Those organizations.
Whether you're part of a community.
Exactly. So I can't say that I'm not part of the community. I'm a part of the community. I take Zionism, which turned from a extremely positive word into an ugly word in the world, another problem, which I'm not going to talk about, which is a shame. Zionism means, to me, meaning that you work for the public, you put any effort you have to service that which is larger than you. I grew up in a family that's making money is because you can't buy anything. You can't buy food if you don't have money. But to be a really good person, you need to volunteer. That's very clearly the introject throughout all the generations, and everybody operates like this in my family. So hence all these volunteering places that I sit at, and I always give therapy for free and whatever, because this is how it should be. So, and community is essential. So yes, I think I am part of the community, and I'm part of AGT since it was created. And what was it, 1992, something, I can't remember, the first New Orleans conference, and just before. The EAGT was driven by Ken Evans, who was one of the GPTI people, and a graduate of Metanoia. He graduated just as I arrived, so I was never his teacher. So I belong to the community in different ways. Do I feel like I belong to the community? I don't know what the community is. I feel that I belong to pockets of the community. I have lots of good friends and very good acquaintances, and I have some profound enemies probably too. And we said we're not naming people, so I'm not going to name names. And because a lot of what I teach nowadays is to do with organizational work and leadership, and because one of my hobby horses is dialogic leadership, which I think is the thing all of us should have paid attention to just because of the state of the universe. And I lost what I wanted to say. I had a very complex thought that escaped me about leadership and dialogic leadership. Anyway, I'm sure it was interesting, but it's gone. So, either maybe it comes back, or maybe the people that listen to it, if they get thus far,
they can
will
complete
it themselves.
Well, it was about being part of a community, and maybe we can leave it there.
I have no idea. It was too convoluted, and what happens to me often is I went to the end and I lost the beginning.
That's okay.
At least it's nothing to do with the age. It's always been like this.
Well, this is good. It's one of the disadvantages of having complex thoughts, right? Okay, well, I have sort of two little things and two larger things still. One would be, do you have a favorite memory? Just one of those moments where you go, this was my Gestalt moment. This is one of my favorite memories, stories, experiences.
So now let's see. Something will come, I'm sure.
Mm-hmm. And the other one is sort of the pole of that, which would be one of your most challenging moments.
Well, I think many challenging moments stem from the fact that in Israel and in the UK, sometimes in other places, Gestalt doesn't count as something important or interesting, or that it has really something to contribute. So in Israel, not being a psychoanalyst still definitely was, until not that many years ago, a sign that you're not that successful. If you were really, really serious, not only successful, really, really thoughtful, able, you would have been a psychoanalyst. Which means that being a Gestaltist meant that I followed my heart. But if you talk about belonging, it makes it very difficult to belong here professionally. So I have lots of friends. I have people that studied with me. Yes, there is a differentiation. They can appreciate me, but Gestalt.
Mm-hmm.
So, and that's an interesting.
It challenges your belonging. Sounds like.
Yeah, I realize that it sounds like it doesn't feel like it, but
Mm-hmm.
it does feel like a challenging. It challenges my professional choice.
Okay.
It doesn't feel like it challenges my belonging, but it's ridiculous, eh?
Okay.
So that's, I think that's a challenging one. I'm still left with I have so many amazing memories of studying Gestalt and Gestalt gatherings, and I can tell you another very challenging moment, which I repeat, probably politically incorrect to repeat, but maybe I want to because it keeps coming back. It has been very challenging to feel fully belonging to the AAGT. Still, people would ask me, why am I a president? How come I'm a president of an American association? How did it happen? And the first time at the New Orleans conference, there were two moments. One at the end when people said, everybody who is not American get up. And we all got up, and we were given cups that were leftovers that were not sold of the conference as thank you because we made an effort to come, which was the most honestly inviting gesture by the people who decided to gesture it. Mm-hmm. It's not exactly English. And the most dividing and pushing aside sense. And it wasn't just mine. And we keep talking about it from time to time. We were a big number of us. And so that's one. And the other one was that there was a panel that I think opened the conference, or maybe it was very at the beginning at some point. And the paneling was about first and second generation Gestalt therapies. First of all, I thought that Fritz and Laura, etc., were first generation, but actually that's not how it was presented there. But the first and the second generations were only locals, only Americans. Oh. And yeah, and it took me a while before I thought, probably another conference or two, before I realized that it was completely skewed. So those are two moments that were challenging. And in fact, they come back. And it's not only because I hold the grudge, but actually because it's somewhere, it's left somewhere, and I'm still here. So I guess we just spoke about it yesterday. I think, we have these casual places to meet that we now created for the Corona times. Mm-hmm. So people have a place together. And yesterday there was a very nice gathering. And there was a very meaningful conversation about at the end of the day, the AGT is home, and home sometimes is shitty and sometimes is amazing, but it's home. So you don't just get up and leave, it was beautiful. It was a beautiful 2 hours conversation, people from different places in the world, and none of them was American. It was interesting. We were all simply belonging, which is a big achievement of the AGT.
It is.
That it's international, whether people like it or not.
Mm-hmm. Okay, well, the other two pieces that I have left, maybe a memory comes back, maybe it doesn't, but I know that there must be a lot of them. One of them is, do you have anything that you'd like to say about your lived experience of your gender or as a woman in the Gestalt field?
In the Gestalt field.
Or as a person, I mean, either way. But
could be the same,
It probably has one thing to do with the other,
It's really interesting. I never thought about it. This woman that was teaching the course, the person that was teaching the course I didn't like in Israel was a woman. The Miriam Polster was definitely a very powerful, strong, impressive therapist and a trainer, and was a woman. Next to her was very impressive as well, and still. The Elaine Institute, where I studied as well, always had trainers women. Metanoia, I'm just going by sequence. Metanoia was established and directed and ran by two extremely powerful women, and then a third one joined, and then I joined. So actually the institute was run by three way over large women, me being one of them, and one regular sized woman, physically I mean. So when you ask about it, and all my Gestalt life are wrapped by, with, next to women. So it's like,
And yourself, your own experience as a woman in there is how?
It's just me, just being part of. And all those things, that we speak about as given, like that men get more space and men publish more and men, feels less dramatic to me. Even though I'm sure if you go with me through names and books and whatever, it might be that we're still similar. But even if you think about how many presidents the AGT and the EAGT, not too bad. We're doing quite well. I never stopped to think about it, actually.
Mm-hmm.
So it almost, I don't want to be rude, but it feels like non-question. I'm sure if
I mean, for a lot of people it is, but for some people it's huge and it's very figural.
Sure.
And it has
no,
a lot
it's a good
to do.
question, but
Yeah, no, I'm just asking.
Pleased. I'm quite pleased to learn what I learned from you digging into my brain.
Mm-hmm.
It's very interesting.
Okay. And the last thing that I would like to ask is about the future. And it's either for your future with Gestalt, what do you want to do? Where do you want to go with it? Or where do you think it is going?
We just talk about here and now at length.
I know we can futurize. We can be neurotic for a moment or not.
You catch me, I'm back to the coronavirus days. I just realized in the last couple of days, after a month, because of my mother's situation, it's coming up to 8 months that I'm just living more or less a day at a time. But of course, I didn't lose the fact that there is a world, and I didn't lose the fact that there is future. And serious questions that the AGT needs to face because of the coronavirus. In the last couple of days, I realized the obvious, that as most of my life is teaching away from Israel, it's going to be the last life probably to be restored, which is interesting, to say the least. And I'm not that young to be serious for a moment about age. So a friend of mine just asked me today, how are you? And I said, it's very strange to grow old doing nothing. Because it's not true that I'm doing nothing, but that was what I realized. I was typing back on the WhatsApp and just sent it like this. She's also a professional. And it feels like the future is a very strange place right now for all of us, and for me specifically. So people do plan ahead, and we correspond and talk, but we don't know what will be. So I hope that the future personally for me includes continuing to teach and train and work, the bit that I still actually work hands-on, which I love, as I did before, or similarly to the way I did it before. It's not very ecological, I still love it. I try to do other things for the ecology. For Gestalt, I want to say, in a way, almost the opposite from my personal wish. I've been thinking a lot about how often other people are brought to teach. Some of the time I know it's the same as it used to be in Israel. It's because it's a must, because there isn't a local who is senior enough who can teach. Some of the time is because people remain dependent and, not noticing that they can do things on their own. So maybe local countries will be developing differently with more, okay, so I can't have anybody else. Now, what can I actually do? which I think could be wonderful and interesting, because a lot of the coming and going, some of the coming and going is justified. It is nice to have somebody that can teach you, and you don't have to invent how to slice bread because somebody already invented it. And some of it probably is less justified. So I'm interested. I've been thinking a lot about it because I do go and teach quite a lot.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot in places that I understand that they need it. If they don't have one crop of students yet, they certainly can't train yet. So that's a thought I have. And one thing that I'm missing, that I miss a lot, and I really would have liked us to do differently, and I have a very little success in it, is to collaborate more and to think and to notice that this universe, that we have something amazing to contribute to this universe. And I would prefer that we should start doing it more out there and less only within ourselves. To begin with, start collaborate between the Gestalt different entities, but actually to be, it feels like a very serious conviction. Not feels, it is a very serious conviction. We have to do more. And we have what to contribute, and we're too stingy about it. Stingy is it's an effort. And it's back to where I come from, that you have to all the time be interested to give more to the good of the other and to the better, how is it called, good, than your own. But now it feels critical. So I can't tell you that I think we're going that way, but I can tell you that I wish we went that way.
And there's definitely an opportunity, and there's a very strong invitation and a push. There's a chance.
I hope you're right. I think there is a global invitation by the global situation. I don't know that we are focused and interested in. It's a value system. It's something very deep. It's hard. It's a discipline and it's a value which is.
Well, and like you just said, it also implies grief. It implies letting go of what we were doing and how we were doing things. Mm-hmm. And, you know, what a lot of us would have liked to do with the rest of our lives because it's a model we were offered. And now all of a sudden it may not be on the table anymore.
Yeah. And accept. You said grief, and I thought, yes, end. So I was looking for the end. Mm-hmm. And I think the end is accepting that we have to do more. I almost feel it physically. Mm-hmm. No, I feel it physically, but almost more in both pain, not pain, but some realization of responsibility. Weight, that's the realization. The weight of the responsibility to look all around and to understand that communities and how the bigger looks, it also impacts how I am at the end of the day and how my beloved children, grandchildren, and whatever will be, and what world they will have. It feels responsibility. It feels a weight, not grief. I'm hearing yours, but I'm fixing it for myself. Mm-hmm. I think it's a heavy weight of responsibility. If you ask me, why did you become the president of why did you agree to be nominated as the president of the AGT? I have only one answer, because I think it's my duty and obligation to give back. Mm-hmm. And we're older, we can do it. We can do it because hopefully we're less obliged, to young families and to making money and to surviving in other manners. I don't think we have a choice. So yes, it's about weight and conviction and obligation. Well, that's what came out.
that's
I understand why some people at the end of this don't want it to be published.
Oh no, please don't say that. I'll cry.
I didn't
No,
say I won't publish it. I just said
you might
listen,
not.
if
Yeah.
your
Yeah.
questions are so serious that if I hold my integrity and I answer what I do say, I say with the full truth and the what's right for me, then it's quite revealing.
Mhm. And I appreciate that, and I'm certainly not trying to expose. I'm enjoying and I'm appreciating as we do this. So
You know, the one difference that we forget, the difference between questioning and answering is a word of choice. The fact that you asked doesn't mean that I have to answer. The fact that I answer means that I chose to answer.
that's true. And that has allowed us to meet, and I appreciate that. And I thank you for that. And if there's anything else you'd like to say, I guess now is the time. And I think that we have a lot of things to continue in different areas afterwards.
We shall.
So is there anything you'd like to add?
I don't think so. I like that you put the effort into this. I'm in the only thing maybe that I'd like to say is I always, when I finish work, especially with organizations, I say, please let's take a couple of minutes to think what you want to say here rather than at the parking lot when you walk out.
Mm-hmm.
I think there is a tension that I think, again, the coronavirus days highlight between working virtually and ecology. And you and I had lots of conversations about it. I'm sure we'll have more. It seems reasonable to give up on the face-to-face where you can touch places. And of course, the coronavirus hyped it because I can't even hug my grandchildren who is less than 10 minutes away, or are less than 10 minutes away. But I'm worried about this. I feel a lot of push for a lot more virtual and a lot less traveling is bad and this is bad and that is bad. And it's true. And I'm worried about something of the soul and the body that might be lost. And I could be completely wrong. I'm just sharing with you, when you asked me what else you want to say, I was thinking about this medium. And when I sitting, it almost feels, what's the big deal? Whether we could kiss and hug when we met or breathe the same air. But when my daughter says, well, I was just here. I say, yeah, but when I go to sleep and we breathe the same air, it's different. Mm-hmm. Even though we, of course, sleep in different rooms. So something about breathing the same air, which I don't want to lose, or I want to find a way to not to belittle it, to somehow keep it as valuable.
It's true. And this isn't the same. We're both in our little box on the screen. It's not the same.
No.
But it's what we have right now, and I appreciate it.
Sure. I appreciate it too. I said I appreciate the project that you're doing. As I said it, I realized that the other one came in.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Well, thank you. If you're okay with that, I will end this here.
Sure. Have a great day, and I shall have a great evening that highlights the difference between where you are and I am.
Mm-hmm. Thank you.